Okay, I have a question. One of the frequently recurring statements is that, this economic inequality can result in social mayhem, confusion. And I'm thinking Occupy Wall Street. What if that movement had been successful? Well, I don't see it as having been a success. But if it had been successful, and if people crossed racial and gender and economic boundaries and united, because that was about this 1%, what would happen? Because the theorists are suggesting that you can have social unrest as a consequence of this concentration of wealth.
Well, what I'm curious about is whether the U.S. is in some way, because of the difference in scope of this inequality on the Gini index, for example, starting to approach the Central and South American countries. Are we headed in an destabilizing situation?
Our current Gini index is almost identical to Mexico. They're 48, we're 47.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous for the stability of our country. Sarah is quite right. And may I say, that's not a new theory at all. There's actually an instability index. And right now, India and China rate more stable than the United States, which is kind of bizarre.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had an interesting conversation with some journalists in Hawaii about stability, and there was an American journalist who said, that's not our problem. That's not our responsibility. The Chinese said, what do you mean it's not your problem? It's everybody's problem. The journalist said, no, we don't do stability. We do truth. The stability takes care of itself somewhere else.
Making this about class warfare. I understand how de facto certain things are happening, and I understand about institutional poverty and inability to achieve without the proper tools, or the concepts, the old concepts of equal treatment versus equal achievement. If somebody starts so far behind, they can, even when you start treating everybody the same, they can't catch up.
Right.
So I get all of that, and I believe in those things. I truly, truly do. But at some point, we also have to encourage in society growth, economic development, and do it in certain ways that's not going to, widen this gap in equality. I don't know how to do it.
But I am also concerned about the people in my group, okay? That middle class, where the income is stagnant and the costs are rapidly
your buying
increasing.
Power is decreasing exponentially. Right.
And so just as you're concerned about your children and your grandchildren, and they're doing well now, I'm wondering about mine. That if this pattern continues, where does middle class slip down and become more dependent on government assistance and in a more difficult situation? And at what point do these people say, because see, right now we have a lot of people who don't understand that they're not in that 1%. I mean, I don't know why they don't understand it, but they don't.
Wait, so you think that there are more people who think they're in the 1% than really are?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay,
That's why
Yes.
I always make a point of saying you got to put a couple more zeros on this.
Well,
discussion.
I agree, but I just
my concern is you want to have somebody be able to go out and start a business and go forward, right?
Right, of course. I think we all
If you want to start a
business,
if you want to start,
yes.
if you want to start a pizza parlor, the problem isn't government. The problem is
Domino's
Pizza Hut
and
may
Pizza Hut.
cut its prices by 20% to keep you from entering the market.
But
or
you know
Domino's
what?
might,
so on.
Well,
wait
and
a
so
second.
on and so on.
I grew up in Ann Arbor. I knew Tom Monahan. He started that damn pizza situation before. So he started that way. He started with nothing.
So then,
But could he do it today, or would the very companies he started force him out of business before he had a chance? I mean, when I was a kid, George, just like you, there was a lot of private restaurants. I know Ann Arbor. I know there was a number of private restaurants. How many of them are there today? Or how many of them are
you've
big
identified
boys
a problem
and so on and so on?
So you've identified a problem, in your view, which I may or may not agree with. But what's the solution? Do we prevent businesses from being too successful?
Now you're talking about businesses. We're talking individuals.
Okay, do we prevent
businesses are very different sort of critter than an individual.
Okay, do we prevent individuals from becoming too successful? Because you've cited Microsoft and you've cited businesses.
I think the solution is ethical and moral.
Yes. That the wealthy are so wealthy that they can prevent, and they want to prevent other people from moving into that 1%. And so that happens consistently, and it happens under the guise of competition and fair enterprise and all of these other guises. But we all know that they can destroy someone before they can move into that category.
David, are you bothered at all by the fact that David Ricardo wrote that in the end of the 18th century?
No, not at all. I think Ricardo and Adam Smith and a few other people there really got the essence. Now, the details change with technology, with globalization, other things, but I think they got the essence. And I always encourage my students, I mean, there is so much garbage out there about what capitalism is and what it should be and so on. What you really need to do is to get back to the source material, and particularly Adam Smith, and read his 2 books, one of which is a moral ethical code necessary for the maintenance of the capitalist system.
Yeah, but a lot of people forgot that part.
Now, I know it. They don't read moral sentiments. It's like, where's that? You know, I'm going to read it. But again, I think they pretty much nailed it in a general sense.
You know, my other thing is this. I really have this sense that we're moving in such a determinist direction that, you know, if you can make it, cool. If you can't, see, you wouldn't want to be you. Okay?
Can I quote that? That's good.
That's a good one, yeah. I mean, that's really the thing that disturbs me, because I'm thinking we really should feel differently about humanity and our fellow men and women in this world.
Yeah,
but
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're the 1%, we're the winners. We don't need any more winners. If you can't make it in that middle bracket, shame on you. And for those of you at the bottom, the sooner you die from diseases that could have been prevented if you had had medical care, your children are mentally and socially retarded because they don't receive the proper nutrition and they have substandard schools, the sooner you guys die out, the better.
You know,
Social Darwinism.
Yes, it is, and that's the thing that disturbs me the most. The victims of Sandy in New Jersey and New York, those people who are in the middle class, and what it will take to bring them back to where they were before this disaster, if anything will bring them back. Now, we know from Katrina that there's a group of people who are always coming back because their resources are such that they can always pick themselves back up. But that group of people, and perhaps my income bracket, in the middle class group, how long will it take them, if ever, to get back to the standard of living that they had prior to this disaster? So I always say that with the exception of that 1%, but for the grace of God, any of us could be in that kind of situation. And who wants a world where they say, make it on your own, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, even if you don't have any boots, or die?
Well, and how does that apply to people like Paris Hilton?
Paris Hilton?
Huh?
To the very best of my knowledge, she hasn't done anything to pull herself up by her bootstraps except for being Paris Hilton.
Well, but she inherited it.
Okay, so that's my point. I mean,
but
here we're talking about,
that.
I am going to go forth, earn this money, I am going to so on and so on.
Can't find this guy.
And now we have the idle rich who simply do
well. I mean, they don't go to work. They don't have to go to work. But, you know, I mean,
we got to go. We got plenty of video. We could be here till